Here we go with part 3. Yeah, so you see what I mean by limited. This app that I'm using only allows me to do 10 minutes. So the last one, it cut me right off. It gives you no warning. And I didn't use the timer, of course. All right, so I was explaining the folded paper pleat, making sure your folds fall on your 6-inch marks. Wait, before you make it flat and give it this shape. All right, I'm going to skip reading this and just explain it to you. So after you fold it flat, you have this shape, which should be 6 inches plus that half inch sticking out. You're going to take one of the skirt pattern pieces, line it up because your skirt has a half-inch seam allowance on this center front, so that you can line up with the seam allowance of the paper pleat. And once you place it there, make sure you have, just like this, some of the paper pleat sticking out at the top and at the bottom, right? You can pin it, put a pin here, put a pin here to keep it from moving. You do not want it to move. If it moves, it's going to mess up your whole entire pattern. All right. Once you pin it, then you take your tracing wheel, one of these at the bottom. Excuse me. Let me show you. This tracing wheel, that one. This is the one I would recommend you find. I gave Moods. No, Moods. I don't think Moods sell these, but there are a couple other places in New York who have websites where you can buy this for. But just search online, you can easily find it. This one is still good, but the trouble is with this one, when you're doing the style that I'm using, this doesn't poke through the paper all the way because the teeth are little short ones, little short teeth. This one has long spikes. They will go through, and they'll poke you too if you don't watch it. All right. So you take the tracing wheel after you pin the skirt pattern on top of the paper pleat, and then you just run it on the edge, right where the seam allowance is. Don't run it on the pattern paper. You're running it on the seam allowance edge. And you're doing it at the waist and at the bottom there. And you're applying pressure, making sure you poke through all the layers, right? So when you unfold it, you have this. And the lines, when you unfold it, you're going to see how they go up and down, up and down, up and down. All right. And make sure you have your marks. So what you're going to do is just turn that center fold and just put a mark there. And cut away the extra paper. I mean, you're going to cut on that line that you just made. Put your marks there. Put a half-inch seam allowance for the center and for the folds. All right. There is a special mark for a center notch. I actually forget what that is. But as long as you know what you're doing and how you're folding your pleat. All right, now your grain line, as you see, is biased. So you just take your L square, line your L square, one side of the L square up with your center fold. Then from this corner of the L square, you measure, what is it, 6, 7, 8, whatever, 7 from each corner. From this corner there, 7, from this corner there, 7. And you make a mark on both ends where the 7 inches is. And you just take your yardstick and make one line, straight line. That will be your grain line, a bias grain line. All right. All right. Then we get to the sleeve. You can read that while I'll explain it to you faster. The sleeve is fast and easy. You just take the sleeve sloper and you're tracing the cap and down to the elbow on two set. You're going to trace it first like this on one piece of paper. On another piece of paper, you're going to trace just the elbow line, and you're going to place a line going straight through the center of it, right? The first one that you did, you trace the cap down to the elbow line, and you do the same thing with that. You put a line straight through the center of it. But then on that one, you're going to cut it in half. So you have two pieces, right? You're going to separate the front and the back. Then you go to the other one where you just trace the elbow line and you drew a line going straight through the center. And you're going to mark right where the top of the sleeve is before you cut it, of course. You're going to measure that mark. Then you're going to take the two pieces that you cut, put the corners there at the ends of the line, and you're going to open up the gap. That line that you put there at the sleeve, the height of the sleeve, is going to be 3 inches. Each side is going to be 1.5 inches. Of course, 1.5 inches on this side, 1.5 inches on that side. Then you open up, move the pieces until their cut part lines up with that. They're not going to line up perfect. All right. Almost never does. That's why we're going to use the hip curve again. And you're going to redraw that line so that it comes and gradually goes right back into this 3-inch line that you made, and then come back out and go. Again, keep this as your draft, and you would, of course, you taping the pieces down, and you take another piece of paper, put it underneath, and you trace the whole thing off as one sleeve. And for the sharing mark, you take the front notch, the back notch, and you move them. Now, this line is 3 inches, yes. So you move again 1.5 inches away from that cut line on front and back, and that's where you put the notches. 1 notch for the front, 2 notches for the back. That's going to be your sharing space. So when you share it, you're going to share from this notch to the other notch. Do not forget to put your shoulder notch back in there. All right. It's really just a 1/2 inch from where originally it was. You just move it 1/2 inch over the shoulder notch. All right, it's going to cut me off again because I'm not using the timer. So bear with me. All right, the collar, Mandarin collar, 2 parts. Is a left side and a right side. So you're only using half of the neck measurement. So you're using half of the front and half of the back. Meaning, if the back of the neck from shoulder line to shoulder line on the back is 5 inches, if it's 6 inches, well, we're using 2.5 or 3 inches. That's this mark here to here. This would be the center back. Now, if you were to draw a line straight over and then go up 2 inches, that's where you're going to take the next measurement and add that, which is the front neck. And you're going to make it go from this measurement up to the 2-inch mark. Your Mandarin collar is 1 inch wide. You can do the curve tip like that or have it square. This helps it because the center back is going to be on straight grain. So your grain line is up and down. And this is going to be bias. And that's going to help it fall into that curve of the neck and sit really nicely. Trust me, I've done that multiple times and it works beautifully every single time. Now, as far as the trimmings for your dress, you can use this neck trimming. You can Google neck trimmings, do a Google image search and check neck trimmings. Find a store that has these neck trimmings where you can order them from and use them to finish your blouse. Even though the dress I designed has a zipper in the center back, so that if you're using these neck trimmings, you don't use the collar, of course. You have the neck trimmings. All right. You have other trimmings you can use for